Hey guys, welcome to book review number 129. Today I am going to be reviewing Living and Retiring in Hawaii, the 50th State in the 21st Century by James R. Smith and Diane Smith. I believe they're husband and wife. Anyway, this isn't really necessarily a travel log or creative writing as it is sort of a kind of how-to guide, as the title says, of how to retire in Hawaii. Kind of the things you need to know, things to be prepped for. There's a lot of prices, kind of the secrets, some of the differences between the various islands. Um, a lot of it really was sort of prices and specifically catered to like housing prices, when the market was good, when the market was bad. Um, there were also a lot of things related to kind of the various feelings of the different islands. Um, the main islands you can retire to or live on are Hawaii, Maui, Molokai, I believe that's how it's pronounced, Lantai, um, yeah, Oahu, and Kauai. Um, they talked a little bit about some of the natural disasters and stuff. They mentioned specifically hurricanes that occasionally hit Kauai, though they did mention that natural disasters are much less common in Hawaii than, say even like California or, like the middle United States with tornadoes and floods and stuff like that. Kind of another thing that they cautioned is everyone wants to live in paradise. We all see it on our computer screens, or read in travel literature. But if you're moving to Hawaii, you're really moving to a rock. Now there are plane tickets, you can fly, but those can be somewhat costly, as well as time consuming of just getting back and forth. From the This was primarily taken from the perspective of Americans looking to retire to Hawaii. So getting back to the mainland of the United States is time and money expense. Um, what are some of the other things they covered? Kind of, the weather conditions. You know, you got the very limited temperature range that can only be described as balmy. But for people that are used to the seasons, this can actually be a little bit disorienting. Again, not to the point where, um, you know, you'll necessarily be overwhelmed, but the transition between the two is more than what people sometimes think it to be. Um, they mentioned, you know, a lot of things having to do with seniors, having to do with like nursing homes versus independent retirement facilities. I know I'm 32 years old, so that had some interest to me, but it's a long term prospect. They talked about ethnic relations and population trends. Um, Specifically, Hawaii is one of three minority majority states. That meaning that no one ethnic group forms over 50% of the populace. And Hawaii is definitely the one that's like most split. I believe the other two are California and Texas. And white people make very close to 50% of those states. But white people are actually the third biggest or smallest, I don't know how you put it, minority within Hawaii. The first two are Asians, which fall into a whole, you know, subgroup that is, you know, to classify all Asians together is pretty broad in and of itself. And then the second group is Native Hawaiians. Um, Overall impressions of the book, it's not exactly the most entertaining of reads in terms of narrative, but it does provide a very handy look at what exactly needs to be done with Hawaii, where the image versus the reality kind of meets, where it diverges, and gives you kind of an insider tip on living and retiring in Hawaii. And it's also useful for people that are not just looking to retire there, but also to move there. It does take a retired person's perspective, but things like cost of housing and stuff like that are universal to whatever age bracket you are currently in. At the end of the book, they gave the recommendations of places that they would retire to. They did, like, I believe, a top 10 with a number of also, well, what's the word I'm looking for? A top 10 with some additional uh, places that you might want to move to. They live on the island of Hawaii, which I think is really probably the best choice. At least, well, I don't know. It's not the best choice, but it's would be my preference just because it's not as urbanized. But the population it does have, and it's kind of spread out because it takes up a huge. It's easily the biggest island. Matter of fact, it's an island that's bigger than all the other islands combined. Um, but the population that is there is enough to provide infrastructure for both retired people as well as jobs for people that are still of working age. It also mentions Oahu. That's sort of like urban retirement, lots of jobs, a little more expensive on the real estate, lots of infrastructure. And then the rest of the islands are sort of varying degrees of being rural. Um, Kauai being the Garden Isle, Maui being, or yeah, Maui being the whatchamacallit Isle. I don't know. A lot of resorts on Maui. And then Malawi and Lantai are both kind of a little bit sketchy for retired people just because of how little facilities there are there. You can definitely do it, but you just have to be prepared for a little less, a little more limited, uh, accessibility. Okay, I've kind of rambled on too long. Living and Retiring in Hawaii. It's a good book. It's a good reference. It'll give you some insider tips. Check it out, you guys. All right, bye.